Welcome to Gold Coast Insider, where we bring you business insights, stories, opportunities, and forecasts from movers and shakers across the Gold Coast. I'm your host, Estella Rodiguero. I'm CEO of Regional Development Australia Gold Coast. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Natalie Moloney from Helm Career Services. Natalie is a dedicated advocate for helping women navigate their return to the workforce after extended career breaks. So whether you've been focused on raising a family, caring for others, or simply taking time out, Natalie brings practical advice, resources, and encouragement to help you take the next step with confidence. So grab a coffee, settle in, and discover what support is available out there to help you relaunch your career on your terms. Now, Natalie, in 2021, you launched At the Helm Career Services to help individuals, especially women, return from career breaks and navigate their next steps with confidence. What inspired you at the time to launch At the Helm and to focus strongly on supporting women returning to the workforce?
Yes, Estella, that's correct. And look, for me, it was a personal experience. I had a conversation with a mother at my daughter's school a few years ago, and she was talking to me about having had a few years out of the workforce. It was approximately 7 years. She'd been raising 4 children, and she felt like the time was right to re-enter the workforce. And, while we were chatting, she mentioned to me she felt really fearful about the whole process. She felt like she'd forgotten what her skill set was, and she didn't know how to navigate the process. And while I could absolutely empathize and resonate with some of what she was saying, because I too had career breaks raising my 3 children, I just felt like I had one of those very strong light bulb moments where I thought, oh my gosh, I could help you. I'd come from a HR background for much of my career. I'd had that exposure to recruitment practices, to coaching and development. And I just thought, there must be so many more people in this situation that could use this targeted support. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it after that conversation. So from that day on, it was really about putting steps in place to start At the Helm Career Services.
So you mentioned you're a mother of 3 yourself and you also took a career break. So how did that personal experience shape the way you support other women in similar situations? So you would have recognised the issues with returning to workplaces, wouldn't you?
Definitely. And I think when you've got that lived experience, Estella, like you just get it. And, I knew personally some of those key sorts of emotions and challenges and barriers that I experienced. And then, that was a really good instigator for me to research further around that and just understand other people's stories as well and use that experience to put together some meaningful services.
And it must come down to confidence too. I mean, if you've been out of the work, and honestly, Natalie, and I'm not telling anyone anything new, the immense changes, the rapid changes within the workplace and the expectation, and particularly within IT, and it's just been astronomical, hasn't it? And it's very fast moving.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's just we need to keep up and, it's there's different ways to do that, but that self-confidence is probably one of the biggest things that takes a hit during this time, and that's a really key focus of the work I do because, regaining that self-belief is critical to be able to navigate this process in a positive way. So it's a huge factor.
So let's talk about numbers. Like we keep talking about this, but let's talk about numbers. And I've done a bit of research, and these are all numbers. Some of them come from yourself as well. So the share of women in employment, we comprise currently 47.9%, so a little bit less than half of all employed persons in Australia. Um, and yet only 35% of leadership roles are filled by women. And that's in Australia. But globally, women only hold approximately 32% of senior management roles, which is slowly increasing in gender diversity at the leadership levels. But if you're looking at the Fortune 500 companies, there's only 10.4% now have female CEOs. We still have this massive gender problem in a significant, I should say, gender gap at the top levels of of jobs. But in Australia, women occupy 34.9% of senior management roles. So the numbers speak for themselves. I think they're slightly better than they were. But what do these statistics tell us about our progress and the work still to be done?
Yeah, look, you're very right. There have been improvements, but these statistics are still alarming. And, whilst workforce participation is at an all time high, another stat that I do like to mention is for women who are employed, earlier this year, it was indicated that 520,000 of those women are actually underemployed. So they're wanting more hours, and they have the capability to do so. So, I think that it all comes back to, there are barriers. There are barriers for women to thrive in the workforce. And whilst there have been improvements at policy levels, there's society changes that need to occur too. Businesses, organisations need to be on board. And it's just about having more opportunities for women to be able to thrive in the workforce.
When you say, can we unpack that underemployed? So underemployed, is that like getting less hours? Is it underemployed as their skills level? Are they underemployed in skills level? Or do they just get the jobs which are easier to get into that fulfill their need now? So what are we talking about?
Yeah, it could be a little bit of everything you've just said, Estella.
Okay.
So
Mm,
it could be, look, they've just taken an opportunity, and it could be that they're available for more hours, that they have more capacity to offer more to the workforce.
mm.
And there's different reasons for that, but I think it's
Yeah.
an important stat.
And can we also talk about the primary reasons for career breaks?
Yeah. Look, a really large percentage of women who are taking career breaks, it is for that, you know, parent caregiving. Sometimes it's caring for elderly parents as well.
Yes.
Sometimes it's illness and health concerns. Sometimes it's supporting partners with their careers. There's a number of different reasons, but that parenting aspect and taking career breaks for that is one of the biggest.
And I was just thinking, it must be really hard for women re-entering the workforce because if you're going for a job, you are actually coming up against your male counterpart. And we do that because it's an equal opportunity. We like to, to ensure that we are being diverse in who we're putting forward.
Yeah.
But many women report needing to reprove themselves despite having extensive prior experience. So, what are some of the most common fears women express when they're thinking about re entering the workforce after an extended break?
Well, look, it's certainly that like that
Feel
self-confidence and
confidence in.
just devaluing that experience that they have gained, but also not thinking about what they've gained during the break as well in terms
Very
of
good.
skills and
Yep.
experience. And that's really critical. So that's a big one. But they're also worried about bias from, recruitment processes and how this gap's going to be reflected. There's perceptions about women returning to the workforce that they might not be as committed or dedicated, or they'll need more flexibility, and all of these things play on their mind, and which affect confidence through that process.
So, let's talk about what they bring. I mean, there's often a narrative about around those gaps in a resume, but women returning to the workforce bring immense life experience, which can only be beneficial to an employment, to a company. So, what skill sets do they bring that they often overlook or undervalue?
You're so right. And look, I really think career breaks, and you're still doing unpaid work, and it's still a period of growth. So the key things that I think about, which are key employability skills, also is time management, multitasking,
Mm,
but even things like emotional intelligence. So, that resilience and patience and empathy, which, as you know, are critical for leadership as well.
yeah.
But then there's communication, problem solving. And I think one of the really big ones is that agility and adaptability. I'm sure any parent can attest to some of those challenges they have to navigate, particularly in those earlier years, or although I'm still navigating them as the children are getting older as well. So, sometimes you have to draw on a number of these skills just to get out of the house in the morning. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but we can devalue them because then, a lot of people think, well, it's not paid work.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Mm.
And yet it brings this enormous wealth and of knowledge and emotional intelligence into a team environment in the workplace, as you say, because we can multitask, we can deal with different personalities all at once, really,
That's right.
before you take them to school. And that's just in the first 2 hours of being a mum.
Yep.
So let's talk about At the Helm. Can you give us a bit of an overview of what At the Helm Career Services offers? So, any women listening out there, sit down and listen to what you can offer them to help them get back into the workplace.
Absolutely. So, I offer a range of tailored services for both
Mhm.
career returners. I also offer services for organisations to support parents preparing from returning for parental leave. But then I actually also provide generalist career consulting services for adults in terms of things like career consulting, boosting employability skills like job search coaching and interview coaching. But if you want me to focus on those women returner programs, I can
Yeah.
tell you a little bit more about that.
Yeah, do, because if we've got women who are listening on today, I think this is vital. This is what you give to these women, and how you concentrate on supporting them to navigate getting back into the workforce is very valuable.
Yeah, well, look, when I was planning the business and planning these services, obviously, undertook a lot of research to really understand what are
Mm.
these barriers, as well as, through lived experience, like we discussed before. So I developed a workshop which is all about helping career returners navigate things like number one, self awareness, and that's helping build their self confidence too. So thinking about, okay, what is it I bring? Doing that skills audit, doing that strengths audit, but also building career management skills to know how to explore options, understand things like values and priorities and motivations and all of those sorts of things that are going to help make informed career decisions.
Mm.
But then, just those employability skills are critical. So I also work on topics like how do you have a good resume? How do you,
Yeah.
that important online branding? How do you effectively communicate about yourself? And that's, on paper as well as verbally in interview processes. So all of those things that are really going to help someone think about, well, what can I do? How can I get there? And then how can I navigate some of those barriers that I may face during this transition?
Because it's an interesting world. I took time out when I had my daughter. It's an interesting world. For a long time, you're a mum, and it's very hard to come back to being a, a, a business person or being in the workforce versus being a mother, isn't it? Because you're very embedded in being a mum and you get known as a mum. And to get out of that mindset and say, right, well, I am a mum, but I am also a valuable employee in the workplace, and I need to start focusing my mind on that's who I am as well. And it's a hard thing to do. That was probably the hardest transition, is to see yourself as both personalities almost.
Oh, I absolutely agree, and it's you feel like you've been in this other world.
Yeah, I
It's
love it.
and so, there's definitely strategies to get back into that back to work mindset that I
Yeah.
like to talk clients through as well.
And I think, resume and job applications now, even filling out for a job application, you really need to hit the right words at the right time in the right place, don't you? It's very much, the world has changed very much that way as well.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
that's why gaining some support in those practices can be
Yes.
really valuable for people as well.
So you also, one of the things I really think is a great program that you do, you offer a free 15-minute consult. I think that that's great. Like, if I was a woman that's listening to this, and we will talk about what their first moves are and what they should do a little bit later, but to have that, what kind of questions or concerns do they bring to you? And we are talking about predominantly women, but you help all people throughout your company, but your passion is for women. What sort of concerns do they bring to you in that first conversation?
Oh, look, it will vary, but let's say for that cohort of women returners, it's really about I don't know where to start.
Yeah,
Like
right.
I'm
Yeah.
completely lost, and it's just helping them really think about the steps that they can take to become clearer in this process and know how to navigate this process with confidence.
And we've almost got this overwhelming amount of information out there, and it's became so much information that comes from all different that you really don't know where to start. It's like that. Like we've got so much help out there, but it's how do you find it? How do you navigate through that? And how do you find a meaningful engagement with someone who supports you through that, isn't it? And I think that that's what people need. I think we've got to go back to supporting people and on a face-to-face and on that level as well. Um, so let's talk about what's been one of the most rewarding moments since you've launched At the Helm, something that's stayed with you.
Oh, look, there's probably a couple I'd like to talk about, but in terms of a client experience, I remember it was probably in about my second year of running the business, and I remember working with a client that was just like that really target sort of person I was trying to help, and this particular woman had had about 10 years out of the workforce, and she just did not understand that value that she still
Mm.
had from prior to, and had done some incredible things on her break as well, but was just so focused on, I've just been a mum, I've just been supporting my partner, and was really lost about how she could regain that identity. So, through working with her, and I remember we touched on career consulting and boosting employability and really working on her branding. And, I remember she came back to me afterwards and told me about this wonderful opportunity that she had been able to secure. And, she was so grateful. And it was such a proud moment because, I got to see that hard work pay off. And there's certainly been others, but that particular woman really, that one really stands out. And but I think in terms of something I've been able to develop for businesses as well as being one of my sort of proudest moments and offerings, and I referred to that before. That's a parental leave transition program, and I had a really wonderful opportunity to support an organisation that was looking for better ways to support women returning to the workforce after parental leave. So. I put together a program which involves one-on-one coaching sessions, one prior to parental leave, and then 5 on return, just so businesses as well can help their people navigate such a daunting and overwhelming transition. So, that's covering topics like how to prepare at that work level for preparing for parental leave, but then on return, strategies for a smooth transition and
Mm.
concepts like work-life balance and managing changes at home, and a really important one, that's self-care, self-belief. So, it's such a rewarding program to be able to offer.
That's an amazing, and particularly that you do it prior to them taking the leave. So there's a really beautiful flow from that, isn't there? And they're supported through that whole process. I think it's brilliant. But there certainly is some employer accreditation and inclusion initiatives out there, isn't it? And I thought we might quickly ask you a couple of questions, and one is Work 180.
Yeah. Yeah, look, there are some brilliant organisations out there doing brilliant things. And so, to begin with, an organisation like Work 180 is all about helping women thrive within the workforce. So, they have accreditation programs where businesses will go through a certification, and that's going to be dependent on things like, their D&I initiatives, their commitment to gender equality, so policies, initiatives, processes, and if they can meet certain requirements, they can be certified as Work 180, sort of like employer of choice. So, and that's a wonderful tag for them to use as an employer of choice when they're recruiting as well, and for their reputation.
Wow. And there's also family-friendly workplace programs. So
Yeah, parents at work have developed this family-friendly workplace accreditation. And similar, you have to have the right sort of processes and policies in place to become certified. But, when I'm working with my clients, Estella, I particularly encourage women to look at these sites, to look at
I was
certified
gonna ask you
employers,
that. Yeah.
not only understand who they are, but understand what are they offering, like what sets them apart. And, it's in this day and age, for employers to really attract the right people, they really need to be an employer of choice. And I think that it can really serve them well to look into these sorts of accreditations as well.
So that is a national certification and benchmarking initiative, isn't it? So
That's correct, yeah.
so they're if you're going for a job, you would be able to see whether they're a family-friendly workplace and they're engaging.
Yeah, look, if they have that accreditation, you can
Yeah.
see that on those sites. But, I guess even if organisations don't have that accreditation, I really encourage them within their recruitment practices to promote all of those sorts of family-friendly and cultural initiatives that they do have.
And that's about flexible workplace, it's about gender equality, it's about career support, and it's about well-being and inclusion. I mean, now, emotional health is a big role for companies and organisations and to embed within their work practices. And whether you're a female or whether you're a male or whoever, it's still a good practice for companies now or industry to now look at that seriously and make sure that that's part of their remit moving forward. Um,
Oh, absolutely.
and the last one I was going to talk about was Future Women's Job Academy, because that was established in 2021 with the support of the Australian Government, Department of Veterans Affairs, and the Queensland and New South Wales Government. And I think it was initially created in response to the COVID 19 pandemic, because a disproportionate amount of women were impacted from the workforce on that. And
Yeah.
that probably is, the schooling from home. It probably has a lot of those sort of rationale behind it. Um, but that's another program that's available, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, I really encourage women to do their research about programs out
Yep.
there because
Yep.
there are some brilliant programs out there. And like you said, with the Jobs Academy from Future Women, again, it's a program that if you've got the right eligibility, it's government funded, you can get support with that full holistic process of navigating returning to work, building employability skills, having targeted support. And there's a couple of other sort of not for profit organisations out there doing wonderful things too, like Suited to Success and Fitted for Work, where
Yes.
they're
Yes.
helping women with that self confidence as well with presentation.
Yep.
Some women have barriers that they are not able to be, dressed appropriately for interviews, so they're helping not only with that, but then also all of those really important employability boosting initiatives
Mhm.
as well.
That's so good, isn't it? Because it,
Yeah,
it
there's some
isn't
great
just
programs
about let's write the right resume and let's try and get in the front door. It's right down to, you know, having the proper attire for the
Yeah.
workplace as well. But as an employer, what can I do to support, and try and, we have a shortage of in a lot of industries of workers. What can I do as an employer to sort of try and increase the uptake of women who can apply for roles?
Well, look, there's a few things. Number one, I think genuinely thinking about how you can offer flexibility because that's obviously a really big barrier for many women. And people are wanting this. And, I think sometimes we get so caught up in the way things have been done. We don't fully look, how can we redesign jobs? How can we, and there's ways to do it. You may have heard, Estella, about return to work programs, which I'm a really big advocate for as well. And, it's generally larger businesses that can potentially offer programs like this, but it's where you might even offer, it's a bit like a graduate program where you're offering a return to work program to people who might have been out of the workforce for some time. You're helping them build skills, you're offering flexibility, and then that's a brilliant talent pool that you may decide to keep on after that program's finished. But then, obviously things like inclusive recruitment practices, and like we spoke about before, it's really about knowing how to promote what your organisation can offer. And that's going to attract people to want to apply for roles within your organisation. But certainly that workplace culture is critical. So, making sure managers are on board, particularly recruiting managers, and just having that really supportive culture within the workplace to allow women to thrive.
And just being very conscious of how you advertise those positions as well, so that you are inclusive and it's not seeming to be, you know, um, focused, using the words that are focusing on just one gender as well, I think is a big one in media and advertising. Um, I was going to ask a question, and so for women who are outside, who are currently at home, surely one of the things they could do is to continue studying, to continue up, making sure that they're keeping updated with, with the things that they do need to do to remain relevant in the workplace. That would be almost a no-brainer. Is there support for women to actually do that? Is to do a really slow, nice course that can just keep them updated?
Yeah, and look, that's going to be very dependent too, I think, on different situations. But like we spoke about before, there are programs out there that can help women during that transition and returning to work. But, some of the other things I want to mention, Estella, is
Yeah.
there's, for example, if you're a member of Gold Coast Libraries, you get free access to LinkedIn Learning. And there's such a plethora of short, sharp, professional development courses. There's subsidised TAFE courses, government initiatives. So, depending on if you're getting government support, you may be eligible for certain programs as well with employment providers. Um, I love, initiatives like micro credentials, and there's
Mm.
government funded, and also you may have heard of MOOCs, which is like massive open online courses, which are like online free taster university courses. So there's a lot of stuff out there and free online tech training. So it's just a matter of looking at what's out there, talking to other people, but there are absolutely things that you can do during your break where you can keep on top of those skills development.
Gosh, there's a lot more than I thought. And you're right, the library now has offerings for all sorts of short courses and, interesting things that people can undertake as well. They've sort of moved outside of just being a library, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right. They
Yeah,
offer
because
wonderful workshops too.
right,
I've actually delivered a few of my workshops within the library, so
have
it's
you?
been really accessible for anyone to come to. So, and
Yeah,
I'm a big advocate of that because at the end of the day, you just want it to be as accessible as
yeah,
possible.
yeah. So for any women listening who are considering returning to the workforce, but they don't know where to start, and we started by saying, there's a plethora of information out there. What would you advise them to do for their first step?
Okay, number one, I just want to say be kind to yourself because this is overwhelming when you're starting to think about it. You don't have to have all the answers on day one, but what I would recommend is just start with curiosity and an open mind. So, that's thinking about what do I enjoy? Potentially what am I good at? What kind of lifestyle do I want? Obviously, then there's that skills audit, and that's going to depend on the direction you want to go, if you would have to retrain or potentially just
Mhm.
upskill in certain areas, but really thinking about what have I gained during my time off as well. Um, Talking to people, Estella, like, sometimes that's just so
Mm.
underrated, but there can be so much value that can come from, maybe just mentioning to past colleagues that you're thinking about getting back into the workforce. Or it could be, I actually had so much success talking to communities that my children were a part of, like sporting associations, and just
Mm.
talking to other parents. And you just think about who's in your network, but at the same time, I would say know how to confidently communicate about what you're looking for and what you can bring when you're having those sorts of
Mm.
conversations as well to make them effective. Um, maybe start to look at what jobs are out there, see what is, if there's anything that energizes you, just to get a feel for the sort of direction you want to go in. But yeah, sometimes people just do need a little bit of professional support to work through this process as
Mm, mm. Yeah, just help them navigate through it, and find where they're and just the value of having those conversations, I think is just amazing because, you get those light bulb moments where you go, "Oh, hang on, I do know how to do this. I do know, and even I think for a lot of women, networking is really hard. I know it's almost hard all the time, a lot of the time, but to go back into networking is can be quite daunting as well, can't it?
Oh, definitely. It's, I really encourage people to think about how you do it.
Mhm.
Practice maybe, how you want to talk about yourself with trusted people, get that
Yeah.
confidence up. And, try to go to whether it's a networking event or, maybe sometimes take someone with you or just,
Yeah, yeah.
put yourself in situations where you've got those opportunities to certainly meet people, but you're feeling confident doing so.
And I think something you mentioned earlier, join your clubs, join the netball club, join the, tuck shop, and that's yet another way of actually accessing a lot of information, but also getting you out there to have those more comfortable, to get more comfortable with talking to different groups of people as well.
Yeah, and, volunteering is a wonderful
Yes,
way
it
to do
is.
that too, as well as
Yep.
building skills and confidence, so I really wanted to mention that also.
That's very valuable. Now, if for any employers tuning in, what programs are available to them to support engaging women into their workplace, and how can they engage better?
So I guess in terms of engaging and attracting, it's coming back to some of those um, sorts of topics we talked about earlier, like inclusive recruitment, particular programs that are going to attract women. But, once you have I just feel like once you have women engaged within your workforce, you've got a real responsibility to be able to help them thrive at work.
Mhm.
So, having the right sort of policies in place to support that, like we talked about before, things like parental leave programs where you're really showing that genuine care factor for how you can support people. And, I feel like when you're employing humans, you've got a responsibility that their well-being is so important, and you not only have to help them thrive at work but in life. So, um, another brilliant resource which I wanted to mention, and maybe we could put a link to, is it's called the Career Revive program, and it was the Department of Employment Relations and Workplace which put this together a few years ago, and they've actually got a number of brilliant resources about how to support women to thrive in the workplace on their site, and that's toolkits right down from developing returner programs to inclusive recruitment to job crafting and job designing. And, sometimes we just don't know about these things that are out there. So there's some brilliant resources that are accessible to organisations as well.
That is so good. So you mentioned that some of these programs will put the links underneath. So for anyone listening out there that would like to look at any of these programs, we'll include all the links on our podcast as well. But look, I'm really, really happy that we have people like yourself and at the Helm Career Services to support women re-entering. I think that they have they play such a vital role in everything we do, and and they bring a wealth of knowledge and experience and quality into the workplace. So it's great that you're out there and you're concentrating on them to support them through. And it's been brilliant talking to you today. Any last words for women out there that are listening today for me?
Oh, look, I think the key message I would like to get across is you have so much value to bring, and sometimes we might forget that, and you might need a little bit of help regaining that, but it's so important that you believe it to be able to, I guess, give yourself the best chance of finding those opportunities that are really going to help you thrive in the workplace.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And all Natalie's contacts will be also included in this. So thank you for your generous time today.
Oh, thank you, Estella. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening today. For a complete list of podcast episodes and transcripts, go to rdagoldcoast.org.au/podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter.